All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, Get the Most Out of FastWax, Tips and Tricks for Your Success. Today, we are joined by Adrian, who is one of our customer care specialists. He is going to walk you guys through all of our slides, our videos, and then at the end, we will have a Q&A. If you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box or in the chat box. And if you stick around to the end, for everybody on the webinar today, we have a special offer. So Adrian, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. So as Nicole said, my name is Adrian O'Daniel. I'm one of the two customer care specialists here at B9 Creations. And the goal is to basically go over some tips and tricks that we have learned here and share them with everybody so we can try to help you set you up for success when you're using the FastWax resin. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed. So I'm going to start off with our first video, which is in talking about supporting a part within the B9 Create 2.0 software. Before I start, I'm just letting you know this support scheme does work for both 1.0 and 2.0 users. I'm just demonstrating 2.0 today. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing this video.
Hello, today I am going to show you how to get a ring prepared within the B9 Create 2.0 software to print using our FastWax resin. The reason why we are making this video is because to print properly within FastWax, you have to change how you support the ring. You can't use how you used to support a ring within emerald or yellow because FastWax is a different formulation of resin, so it requires a slightly different approach in order to get successful prints. The ring that I'm going to show how to support today is our Matrix Signet ring, which is like a class ring type style ring. I'm going to go ahead and open that onto my build table here. That part is just the same as any other ring or any other print. So once I have the ring on my build table, I'm going to go ahead and center it and zoom in a little bit. First thing I'm going to do is turn the model to the side and click on it. And I know for this ring, I need to tip it forward like so in order for it to print properly. So once I've done that, I'm going to turn the ring back to the front. And then I'm going to make sure that it is just slightly above the build table. So my goal is to get the part as close to the build table as possible and then just raise it up just a little bit. That's because those first few layers while on our printer come out at a different dimension because it cures longer. So you don't want the bottom part of your ring to be a different size. So then once I have the ring ready to support, I am going to come over here and click supports. And then my ring is ready to start adding supports. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add support mirroring at the Y axis. This is going to enable me to do add supports to both sides of the ring, but only need to add them, click on one side. The next step before I start adding supports is under support preset. I'm going to change this drop down and make sure that it is set to thin. If you're using tiny, you are going to have prints fail to come out either the right shape or they're just going to fail completely because the support doesn't work. So FastWax is very soft while it prints. And if the support is too skinny, it is going to wiggle while it prints, and it's not going to stay connected to the model or to itself during the print process. And then you're going to end up with the support not doing its job by the time it gets to the ring. So now I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and my goal is going to be start adding supports simply by pointing and clicking. I'm going to start around the bottom edge of the ring, and as you can see, I'm adding quite a few supports here. So as I'm going around, we are just supporting this, and you are adding way more supports than you would with a different type of resin. And that is because, again, the resin is soft, so you have to do it this way in order for the ring to print successfully. And it's not just rings, it's any part. So coming down around, and as you can see, as I'm adding supports on this side, the supports are automatically adding to the other side, so that's a handy trick here. So now that I've done the bottom part, I'm also going to come up here and start adding supports up on this side. So even though it is already colored green in these spots, I know because FastWax struggles with the support being soft and pulling off on the model, I am going in and adding extra supports. Now I'm also going to spin around and I need to get under the shank here. So I'm going to get this edge, and then I'm also going to come down and support right through here, because this also needs to get proper supports. And then I'm also going to add another row of supports right through this middle here, so there's proper support under there. Now one other thing is I'm going to look at the ring from upside down, and then I'm going to use this handy sectioning tool right here. This is the Z. I'm going to move this up just a little bit so it will hide the bottom part of the ring. Now I need to come in here and add adequate supports inside of the shank, because it will also need adequate supports in here in order to print properly. Now while I'm doing this, you may wonder what kind of rings or parts that you should use FastWax for. You should only use FastWax for parts that are not terribly thin, and also parts that aren't intricate. Now not to be confused with detail. Intricate meaning like if has a lot of little thin sections within the ring or the model. Anything that's too thin you're going to struggle with FastWax printing properly, because it's not going to stay connected to itself while it's printing, or while you're trying to clean it. It's going to potentially break apart, and you're just going to struggle with getting that part to print within FastWax, and that's when you would want to go back to using one of our traditional yellow or emerald resins. So now that I have the ring supported, I can turn off my Y. I re-added my support bases. I just had them turned off previously. But now as you can look around, you'll see that the ring has adequate supports all over. So then the next part is you just slice your ring, and then you load it to your printer, and you are ready to print your ring within FastWax. Hello, today I'm going to show you how to support a halo style ring using our FastWax resin. I'm going to demo this on a B Core 550, but this method will work for all of our Core series printers. So as you can see, I already have a ring on my build table, and I have it upside down. The reason why I chose to print this ring upside down is because the halo, or the more detailed portion of the ring, will print better if it's lower to the build table. With FastWax, this is the best way to set things up, if you can get the more complicated part lower to the build table. So the first thing I'm going to do, I already have my support tab selected. I'm going to turn the ring upside down so I can look at it from the bottom, and then I'm going to zoom in. Then I'm going to come over here to my support presets. First thing I'm going to do is change this drop down to tiny. The reason why I'm picking tiny is because I need to support these prongs. So there's 4 of them, so I'm going to support each prong. As you can see, I'm going to support just the very end of it. And then what I'm going to recommend is turning off your support bases so you can have them hidden. Now leaving it on tiny, I'm then going to go in and start supporting all of these smaller prongs on the ring. The reason why I'm supporting all of the smaller ones is because they are all considered an overhang. So they're all going to need to have a small support in order to print properly. And the reason why I chose tiny for the part on the lower end is so there's minimal support scarring. So when you go to clean or post-process your part, you're going to have very small support scarring left behind on your ring. So then you want to just kind of back out and take a look, make sure everything looks good. So that it should be good for all of those overhangs on the very bottom. The next step is going to come over here to your support preset and change it to thin. Then I'm going to use my support or my sectioning plane, and I'm going to grab the Z at the bottom, and I'm going to move this up just a bit. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I am going to now come up here and add some supports at the top of the shank. So let me go ahead and zoom in here. And we're going to add a support right there. We're going to add a support over here, probably one right about here. And I'm going to put one over here in the corner and one right there. Now I'm going to zoom back out, and I'm going to give this a look from this angle. And what my goal was is to try to get these supports that to go and come down through the middle of the halo or to connect to the top of the halo. So like this one here, I'm actually going to redo here. That one was a little too close to the side of the halo, so that wouldn't do its job correctly. So I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to add one more support just a little bit closer. That way it gets into the right spot there. And then I'm going to do this and look at it from the top again, and that looks good. So at this point the ring is ready to slice, so I would go ahead and slice this ring, and it would be ready to go. Now again, with FastWax, you're going to see your volume indicator up here in the top left corner. Once you're done supporting the ring, this is the number that you would use to calculate how much resin you would put in your vat. Also, it is totally fine that your shank is still on the ring up at the top. That part can still be printed just like this. I've printed this ring successfully several times in this manner, so you don't have to remove the shank.
All right, so that's the end of that first video. So really the main focus that I want to touch on is with FastWax, you do need more supports because it is softer, so it is going to potentially wiggle while it prints, and if it does, you're going to have a failed print. So hopefully me showing those two rings was helpful when we talk about reconfiguring your design for a ring you printed in yellow or emerald. That's kind of what we mean is you got to think about it a little bit differently, and you do have to support the part a lot more in order for it to print properly. So some of the do's, obviously, we keep talking about adding more supports. You do want to do that. When we talk about orienting your model as low to the build table as possible, like this halo ring, because that halo part is bigger, and then there's a hollow section in the middle, it makes more sense for it to be closer to the build table so it can get printed first, because when it prints up at the top, there's more opportunity for it to wobble. And then you're going to have a really challenging time getting the supports up to support the halo part properly, and you're going to see a print failure. And when we say using print thicker parts, if a ring is too thin, like I said, it's going to break apart when you're either trying to print it or after you've successfully printed it and you're going in and post-processing and pulling the supports off. It's very easy to accidentally pull the supports or the ring itself apart, or whatever jewelry you're printing, when you're just trying to remove the supports. So we'd recommend trying to not print too thin of things with this resin and stick with yellow or emerald for those. Another note is to keep your FastWax in a room temperature environment. If it's too cold, it's gonna separate a little bit, and then it's going to be really difficult for you to get it mixed properly when you put it back into the vat. So if you just keep it in a room temperature and then make sure you shake it very well before you print. I usually do 30 seconds to a minute of shaking before I print it. We also recommend not using reusing resin. The reason for this, and I know this is always a popular question, is because the resin is partially wax, 20% wax. what happens is when the print is going through the print process and the resin is being exposed to the UV light, it will cause the resin to start to break down. And what will happen is if you reuse resin, you're gonna end up with prints failing, and you may think that there's something wrong with the printer, when really it's the way that the resin breaks down throughout a print. For that reason, we don't recommend printing parts that take longer than about 2 hours. The reason for that is because as the time goes on, over 2 hours, the resin that's in your vat will be exposed to UV light, and you're going to notice cured resin will start to stick to the part that's printing on the top. Like I said, don't print overly intricate or thin parts, because it's just either not going to print or you're not going to be able to clean it. As with any of our resins, if you neglect to shake your resin well, it's not going to print properly, because the mixture isn't going to be the way it needs to be to print properly. And then of course, please, like I said, don't store it in a cold environment, because it will separate, and then you won't be able to get it shaken back up to the print consistency that it needs to be. Now, a lot of this information is on our instructions for use, so I'm going to go ahead and play this video so you guys will know how to find this.
Hello, I am here to show you where you can find the instructions for use for FastWax on our B9 Creations website. To find the FastWax instructions for use, you simply go to www.b9c.com, hit enter. Once you are here, if you come over to product and then scroll down to materials, it will load our materials page. You're going to scroll down to the FastWax section and you click instructions for use. It will take you to this page where you simply click the download in FastWax instructions for use link, and it will download the PDF with all of the directions on how to use FastWax. You can also get directly to this page by simply going to www.b9c.com/FastWax, and it will take you directly to this page as well. Thank you and have a nice day.
All right, so that's where you can go download the instructions for use. So that has a lot of this information that we're talking about on there already. And then this next video is me showing how to prepare FastWax for a print.
Hello, today I'm going to be showing you how to get a vat ready to print with our new FastWax resin. The first step that you do is you're going to measure out your resin within a syringe like so. Now this tutorial is for all of our printers. I have a 550 here for our demonstration purposes today. The ring that I'm going to be doing is our matrix signet ring. It is 4 milliliters in size. So for a 530 and 550, you have to add 10 milliliters to the amount that you put in the syringe. So I have 14 milliliters in the syringe. If you have an XL printer, you're going to add 15 milliliters because it uses a little bit more resin. So once you have your syringe ready to go, you're going to prep your vat. And this process is the same for all resins. You need to make sure you inside of your vat with isopropyl alcohol and a microfiber cloth, nothing else. On the back, you need to make sure you clean this glass with only, you can use Windex and a microfiber cloth to avoid scratching it. So you simply take the syringe and you hold it over the film and you squirt it inside of the vat. Now you're going to notice what's different between this and the other resins that we print with. It's not going to fully cover the film like it does with the other resins. You're going to kind of swoosh it around to get full coverage, but there's not going to be a lot on there, and that is normal for FastWax. So then you just take your vat, insert it into the printer like to do with any other resin, lock it in place, make sure your build table is on or screwed in, close the door, and now you are ready to print. So the ring that I'm going to print today is going to be that matrix ring which is this ring right here that I printed. You notice that I have a lot of supports on here, which I discussed earlier. You just go ahead and hit continue. Make sure you hit FastWax and hit continue again to start your print. Now, once the print is done, it's going to come out looking kind of palish orange. You will put it into a clean unit like you normally do. You will see some discoloration after it comes out. It is normal that FastWax will have discoloration like this. It doesn't affect the casting process in any way. As you clean it more, the white parts may become more visible, and then after you cure the part, you will see some permanent white marks on it. But again, that doesn't affect the casting. That is normal for FastWax. So to find the volume on a print, you simply go to Library. Once your library loads, you're going to go to the part that you want to print and hit continue. Then you're going to pick the resin that you want to print in and your resolution and hit continue. And then right before you select a print, there is a volume right here. That is the volume that you want to use to calculate how much resin you're going to use with FastWax.
All right, so that was basically getting your vat ready to print with FastWax. I know that we used a syringe. One thing that I'd like to stress is if you do get a syringe, the end of the syringe, if it's too narrow and you use a tube to try to pull the resin out of the vat, it's going to be really difficult. So I recommend trying to find a syringe that has a wider end on it. That way, when you're trying to suck the resin out of the jug, it doesn't take a lot of force, because that can be a challenge. This is just one way that we recommend using or measuring FastWax. You can use, there are other methods out there. This is just the one that we found to be the least messy and the most effective for getting the number that we want. So this is how to reach B9 Creations, myself or my coworker Leonore. I know I've spoken to a lot of you guys either on the phone or via email already. Just one thing, when you do reach out, be as specific as you can. Sending pictures is very helpful because we like to see what you're trying to print and outline what you've tried so far. Sometimes we'll ask you for your files. We need both your STL and CPJX file in order to open your file. That way we can look to see how you've laid it out. But that's usually, that's so we can open it on our computer. But we're happy to help. So whenever you have questions, do feel free to reach out to us and we'll do the best we can to help you. So now we're going to move on to our Q&A session. Nicole's been handling some of these questions.
Yes, we have a lot of great questions.
Okay.
So I'm just going to start with the way that they rolled in. The first one is, how much wax does FastWax have?
20%.
Okay, and then what kind of investments, casting investments, is it compatible with?
So it should be compatible with any investment that our other two resins are. I don't know the
Yeah,
one.
I have them here. So
Okay,
we've got
I was gonna say,
our recommended for any of our casting resins is Prestige Optima, R&R Plasticast PT, and then R&R Ultravest Max. And that flows into the next question, which is, can it cast in platinum? Which is yes, but of course with platinum, you're gonna wanna use that harder investment or even like a dental investment. Okay, and then the next question is from Janie Weber, and she wanted to know on the halo ring that was upside down in the supports, what about all the tiny prongs on the shoulders of that one?
those actually came out without supports because of the angle that they were on. The reason why I didn't go support those was because those were more tipped this direction, kind of out. So the part of the ring that they were attached to added adequate support. If they were more angled down like some of those ones in the bottom were, I would have gone in and added tiny supports to all of those too. So it just depends on the angle of the ring.
Great. Okay, and then what about the toxicity of FastWax?
Just like our other resins, as long as it's cured, it's not toxic, but we'd recommend not touching it without gloves on. Same like all of our other resins, always use those nitrile gloves when you're handling it.
Great. Great. And then the last question we have, and if you guys have more actually, I think we have more questions coming in. Okay. So this one is about wrong size parts in inconsistent scaling ratios. So with Emerald, there's already a fixed contraction ratio. With FastWax, our customer is getting a lot of wrong size parts, inconsistent scaling ratios. What's the fix for that?
So one of the things that I have seen when a part will come out with the wrong size, it's oftentimes related to how the part was supported. If the part isn't supported properly, then it won't be able to print in the shape or the size that you want. For example, we had some rings that we were printing that were just regular like circle bands, and I used those tiny supports on the inside of the shank, and when the ring printed, it came out with the wrong size and it was oval shaped. It wasn't round at all. So I had to go in and through trial and error discovered that I needed to beef up the size of the support and the amount of support so it printed properly. Now there is one other thing that comes into play here, and we don't have a guide. Unfortunately, this is where you'll have to reach out to us because it is kind of a case-by-case basis, but the geometry of the part that you're printing plays a big part in that too. Some parts print in different layouts than others. So it's we have to deal with it as a case-by-case basis as they come in. But always reach out if you have questions and we'll seek out the answer and get the answer for that.
Yeah, especially if you're seeing consistent style or geometries, we definitely help you guys through that. Scott Bradford at Rio. Hi, Scott. He wants to know if we have seen any shrinkage over time after the resin is printed. Is there any recommendation time frame to cast the resin and keep the dimensional accuracy?
Okay, so with that, there's not an exact time frame, but we don't typically keep ours for longer than a month and recommend casting after that point for two reasons. One, because it can shrink over time as it's sitting out in the light. But the other part is it becomes brittle over time and your part won't cast properly because it's too brittle when you go to cast it. So we try, with FastWax, we don't actually make any samples that like we do with all of our other samples. We have a supply of them that we can send out. FastWax is always custom or made to order. We don't print them and then keep them on hand for longer than maybe a couple of weeks for that reason.
Great. Yes, definitely. How long to cure?
So the cure is the same as Emerald, which I have a grid if we need to share that out. It is part specific. I can go get that information and socialize that with everybody after our meeting, but it is size specific, so it's rated by how big or small your part is.
Can you over cure it?
To my knowledge, no. We haven't seen that happening yet. I have cured some of our rings a lot, and I haven't seen anything bad, with the exception of those white marks that appear on it. That comes from the UV light over time. So that's the biggest change, is it looks different.
Yeah. Let's see. What is the advantage of using FastWax versus staying with Emerald or Yellow? Why would you switch or print something in FastWax versus Emerald or Yellow?
The biggest advantage for FastWax is it has a cleaner burnout. When you are done casting, there's a much cleaner burnout than both of our other two.
Yeah, we've had some customers say no ash at all, zero, with FastWax. So that is the advantage. Let's see. Can it be boiled like yellow wax? Should it be boiled?
We haven't tested that, but I'm going to say no, and that's because it's partially wax. So I would suspect that adding heat to the part after it's been printed is going to degrade it, and then you're going to see that in your cast.
Yeah. And then someone's asking, what about multiple parts on a build plate when printing? What's the best positioning, or how do you think through that? What would you do if you were going to print a full build plate?
Sure. I mean, I would approach each ring one at a time. So, work on one ring at a time, depending on what size it is, or not size, I apologize, what shape it is, and use your best your best judgment in terms of if it's a halo ring like I showed, we recommend flipping it over, getting that part supported, and then if it's a thicker ring, you can probably print that in a more traditional sense, but just take one ring at a time, and work on it until you feel comfortable. And if you try to print it, I guess what I've also done is if I have something I don't know is going to print well, I will do a trial print first. I will see how it prints before I add it to a whole build table, so I don't have a massive failure at the end. So like I will go with some of the more challenging ones and see, will this print this way? If not, then maybe it will print this way. Sometimes that's the best way to figure out what your approach is how does it actually print?
Okay, that's great. And then we have a question about print orientation and surface finish or surface smoothness.
Okay.
So if you were to orient, so, sometimes you orient a part differently, you get a better surface finish. What's the recommendation there?
Okay, so like that matrix ring that I showed in my example, that's a great one to talk about. If I were to print that ring straight up and down, all of that detail on the top wouldn't come out properly. It's just not the way that the fast or any of our rings would print for that matter. So for something that's detailed like that, it prints much better at an angle, and it gets much the smoothness comes out the way that you need. But then if it's a smoother ring, straight up and down is usually fine. As long as you keep it, parallel with the build table, you're going to get the best results because you're not causing the pixels of the XY axis to cause jagged edges on your part.
Great. And then does FastWax need a larger foundation due to the softness of the material?
No, I would actually, you may need to add a foundation, but you don't need to add a thicker one. You can either do that, or you can use larger radius on your supports, which will act as the foundation. How I always approach it is I will try to print a part without a foundation first. And if it won't stick to the build table, with the supports being there, the adhesion to the build table, I'll go add a foundation afterwards. But I don't recommend adding a foundation that's too thick in size, because that can curl and then while it's printing, it can cause the foundation to curl and then fall off the build table. So you would want to go with a thin one.
Great. Okay. And then just last call for any questions anybody else has. We have one last one. This was more for you, Adrian. Just as you're talking with customers, has anybody compared it to any competitors' resins that have wax in them? Have you heard any feedback as far as that?
To be honest, I haven't. I've had people reach out and ask about FastWax settings, but that's about it in terms of the competitor. Like I haven't. I haven't. Have you?
I haven't. I haven't. We test our own resins, and we just wait for the market to kind of give us feedback as to where they sit. So unfortunately, we don't have that. I could probably follow up with this person later and do a little digging. But I think we just don't have quite the answer for that. Kevin Mahone, he got here late. He wants to know if he can get a copy of the video for the webinar. Yes, we will send this out to everybody who registered today. And we just want to thank you guys all. We're going to wrap up because it's at the end. We want to thank you all for coming and joining us, and great questions.